Yes.
Awesome. Ruth Ann, I'll hand it over to you for our introduction.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. If you're wondering about the pink shirts, February 24th is Anti-Bullying Pink Shirt Awareness Day in Canada, and it has been for many years. And I'm happy to see that some people here not only know what it is, but they're actually sporting their pink shirts, whether they're salmon or whether they're bubblegum pink like mine. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us here in the rainforest today. We'll just go to the next slide. So yeah, because we have such a packed schedule, it really helps if we stick to our Zoom etiquette. So we'll use the raise hand function, and I will be monitoring the chat along with Bridget. So if you have a question that you want addressed, make sure to preface it with questions so that we know it's not just chatter. Our chat can be really busy, which is wonderful because people are engaging, but we don't want to miss anybody. So we just ask that people stay muted until they're called on to speak. And yeah, we will capture all the chat and make sure that that gets shared on the Slack channel. So the rainforest is an analogy. I'm not going to read this. I'm sure everybody in the room can read, but the point is that farms are made for maximizing yields and optimizing that and minimizing risk, the risk adverse environments, where the rainforest is the exact opposite of that. At its very core, it's about taking risks and exploring new ideas and concepts. And it's a wild, untamed space where when ideas are planted, they can sprout and grow with encouragement and support of others within the forest organization. So yes, the vision, it is a vision that encourages big ideas, and we can grow right here at home in Alberta without having to go anywhere else in the world to find the resources and encouragement that we need to grow our big ideas. And with the mission connecting the innovation ecosystem by strengthening the movement behind Alberta Tech. So trust is the key here, and we just really want to build that. I was so happy. This is what brought me to the forest. I'm a social innovator, and when I saw this social contract, I'm like, these are my people and I need to hang out with them and not only learn more about tech because I'm, it's not my field, but just to be part of that. So this was developed in the first summit. We sign it as individuals as a code of conduct and how to interact with each other. And yeah, it's an open and inclusive and supportive environment. So if you haven't already signed the contract, go onto the website and sign the social contract. It's a great idea. And we do have these 6 pillars, and you notice they're not all weighted evenly. They're weighted with the level of importance. So culture is at the very top of that culture of psychological safety, trust, respect, and civility, where it's safe and encouraged to express ideas, thoughts, and opinions without fear of reprisal. We develop leaders here in the forest. We share resources and activities. So yeah, thanks for coming and enjoy the session.
Thanks so much, Ruth Ann. I'm not muted, am I? No. Okay. So welcome again, everybody. Thanks, Ruth Ann. If everybody who is new to the rainforest, if you could use your little reaction button at the bottom of the screen to give a little virtual high five. It's always nice to see how many newcomers we have. There are a lot of folks in the room who join us weekly here at the rainforest. And those folks will be happy to help steward you through all of the different conversations and things that we do. So feel free to use the chat function to connect with people. Just gonna mute somebody. There we go. Okay. Alrighty. So we'll get right into things today. As many of you know, we have been talking about demystifying the startup world for the last few months, and we're going to continue that conversation today. A quick kind of overview of what will happen. We will have our panel discussion for the first 35, 40-ish minutes of the hour. We will then head into some breakout rooms where you have the chance to collide and connect with people you've probably never met or maybe see old friends and network. And then we have one more participant who will be presenting from our Libby program, which we held last year, the Leaders, Innovator, and Big Idea program. So Emily, hoping you're in the room, I'll connect with you shortly to share just a couple minutes of where your project is at. It's a program where we had people with ideas gain access to resources here in Calgary to help get that idea growing and off the ground. And they've been sharing their progress with us at Lunch Without Lunch. And we have some extremely exciting announcements to make from the rainforest. And if anyone else would like to get their announcements queued up for the end of the hour, we will do that as well. So enough about that. I would like to introduce our panelists today. We're going to be exploring the world of corporate governance for startups. And so we have Dr. Michael Robinson, who is a professor and the Chen Fong Fellow in Entrepreneurial Finance, the Haskayne School of Business at the U of C. Dr. Robinson has taught investments, portfolio management, new venture finance, and corporate governance to undergrad, MBA, and executive education students. He founded the Calgary Portfolio Management Trust Program, a hands-on student investment fund at Haskayne in 1993, and he has spent the last 16 years serving as an academic director of the Haskayne's Directors Education Program. He was also the first site lead for Creative Destruction Lab Rockies program and continues to serve as their academic director. And aside from all of that work in academia, he has experience in computer programming, as a system analyst, and venture capitalist. He serves on many boards, has published several books and academic research papers that study Canadian capital markets, market efficiency, methods of raising equity capital for developing firms. And there's an article that he's recently written specifically about governance for startups, and I'll share that in the chat as soon as I stop blabbing here. So today he's going to share his most recent interest of corporate governance practices and the role of boards in startup growth. And he also has a special guest, Melanie McClare, with him of Swirltex. And I'll let you, Michael, introduce Melanie further and get into your presentation now. So I will pass it over to you.
Thank you very much. And I will start sharing my screen here. I've just got a few upfront slides and then I'll stop because I want to be able to see you and see what your reaction is to some of the things we're talking about here. So very, very happy to be part of this discussion here today. I know the Rainforest does wonderful work, and I think that this is an important topic for anyone interested in helping early stage companies, especially in the tech sector, get going. So it's a pretty fun thing. It's my passion area right now, and I'll talk more about that. So just leading into the layout of the day so far, I'm going to talk about who we are, and I think you've already heard enough about me. I'll talk more about Melanie in just a minute here, but I want to just get into the idea, what do we mean by private equity governance? And it might surprise you. I've got a perspective, and the perspective is provided in that article that Bridget's going to put the link to. And then build on those governance perspectives. There's sort of three main perspectives. We don't have time to talk about all three, so I'm going to just drill down on one, which is the entrepreneur's perspective. And this is where Melanie is going to provide a lot of insights because she's been living this for a number of years now. How do you build a team in this environment? What are the levers that you can use to do that effectively? And then what are some of the things that you have to put in place in the corporation to be able to attract support, financial support, but other types of support as well? Advisors, directors potentially wanting to come on and give you guidance. And this work is, some of these ideas are coming out of research I'm doing right now. I'm doing interviews with people out in the ecosystem, and I'll provide some quotes as we go through here. And that's kind of how Melanie and I are going to tag team in here. I'm going to provide a quote from somebody that you may know, and she's going to give her perspectives on the importance of that. And then at the end, I'm going to say, okay, this is great. If you want more information, where do you go? So that's the flow that we want to lay out for you here today. I know I have till 12:40, so I'll walk very carefully and quickly through this. So you heard about me. I've got a lot of background in this area, and I have a passion for it. Melanie is an MBA graduate from the Haskayne School, engineering grad from McGill over 10 years ago, PEng. She's currently the CEO of Swirltex, and I'll talk more about Swirltex in just a minute, but it's a water remediation startup. Melanie personally has over 10 years of experience working in the water industry, and she's one of those people that you want to know because recently Mars identified her as one of the top 10 clean tech entrepreneurs that you should get to know back in September of last year. So she's a rising star in this area. And she is the CEO of Swirltex, which is a great Alberta success story to date, and much more is expected of them in the future. But it's nice to see this idea of a rainforest, an Alberta rainforest. Swirltex was started by Peter Christou in Edmonton in 2015. And he got a lot of support along the way from Tech Edmonton and from Alberta Innovates. when I was running the CDL program in 2017. It was one of the first, well, it was in the first cohort. Swirl Tech was brought in. Peter was the CEO at that time. And he and Melanie got to know each other because Melanie was one of our MBA students in that program. And through that made a connection. And then over time, Melanie joined the corporation and then has transitioned into the CEO role. And we'll talk more about that as we go on here. Do you want to add anything to what I've said so far, Melanie?
No, that's a great overview, Michael.
Okay. I will also add I'm an angel investor in Swirl Tech, so I'm a real fan of the corporation. But before we get to sort of the discussion here, I just want to challenge you a little bit. When you hear the term private equity governance, what comes to your mind? And don't say anything. I'm just going to have you think for a few seconds, and then I'm going to walk forward here. Okay, so you've got an image in your mind. Is this the image that you have when we talk about private equity governance? Probably not. That's the board of Swiss Re, which is a large insurance company based in Switzerland. And, you know, there's diversity of a sort there, but not sort of what you think, certainly not in terms of age and ethnic background. How about this? Is this what you think of when you think about private equity governance? Okay, a bunch of young folks sitting around sharing pizza, just saying, let's just do something fun here. Okay, well, now that I've shattered your visions of what governance is, let's talk about my perception of what governance is and where we go with this. So I have three main models. I'm actually working on a book on this, and this is why I'm spending some time on this right now. The one is the piece we're going to talk about today, which is from the founder or the entrepreneur's perspective. Governance is really about what is the way that you can build a successful corporation and protect that value that you're creating in the corporation. So elements of that are the incentive system that you put in place to attract employees, the control mechanisms you put in place to ensure that there's good understanding of what you're doing and that people aren't doing things negatively. Aspects of that, just simple things like founder agreements, vesting agreements, share purchase agreements, all of those sorts of things, just good paperwork are things that you want to think about, but it goes deeper than that. And that's what the discussion with Melanie is going to bring out here. I have experience as a venture capitalist. And so from a venture capitalist point of view, private equity governance is not that. That's a component of it, but private equity governance is what are the mechanisms that we can put in place as an investor to protect our downside, but also to maximize their upside potential. And the article that you'll have a look at identifies some of those mechanisms, like the form of the security that they invest in, the nature of the contracting that goes on with the shareholders agreement and other mechanisms they put in place, and then their role as a director. You know, as a director on the board, the VC certainly is an active participant in strategy and other aspects of what boards discuss. And then kind of a third perspective, and this comes from the director's education program, which I run, is we have very seasoned, very senior executives, people that are transitioning their careers from senior leadership positions in a corporation to more board positions. And they're trying to think about, how does the job change when I go from being a CEO to being a director on a corporation? It's not the same job. And so the easiest way to think about it is that as a director, you've got this fiduciary duty to act honestly and in good faith with a view to the best interest of the corporation. And what does that mean? And how do you discharge that duty in a private equity context versus a large publicly traded company? And that's a third piece that I'm working on now, and we won't have time to drill down today. But if you're interested in any of these other issues, just let me know, and I can send you some information. There is information available about these different ideas here. So that's kind of where we go here. I'm going to stop sharing now because now I'm going to go to the part where we start the discussion. And so what I've done, as I indicated before, is I've had these wonderful folks provide me with some quotes when I ask some specific questions. And then I'm going to ask Melanie to kind of respond to that. So the first idea is that team is critically important as you are an early stage entrepreneur. It's not you, it's you building a team that's going to be critical to the success of the corporation as you go forward. And so asking some seasoned people. So Andrea Drager, some of you may know, she's a principal with Azure Capital here in Calgary. So she said that it's important that providing access to ownership in the business for founding teams and the critical early hires is an important arrow in a founder's quiver to attract and retain the right talent. So that's the building piece. Then I talked to Mike McCauley, who's a general partner and co-founder of Garage Capital, which is out of Waterloo. And he said, one of the most common problems we see in companies that do not end up finding success are issues with the founding team. And so I've set Melanie up. I've ahead of time, I sent her some questions, but I'm going to add just one question here. Melanie, do you mind thinking about and speaking about the CEO transition that occurred at Swirltex? And that's one of the important things as well as an entrepreneur, understanding what your strengths are and where you can really add value. So do you want to just provide some background on that process?
Yeah, sure. So as first of all, happy to be here. Thank you so much for including me in this conversation. It's exciting. So as Michael mentioned, I came on board after the company had already gotten started by the founder and inventor of the technology, Peter Christou, who's a brilliant inventor and a wastewater expert. We're in the wastewater business, by the way. We treat tough streams of wastewater for recycling for industrial customers. Pete is very much a technology guy, less so a business person. And where we really got lucky, I think, is Peter's recognition of the need to bring on a team and the need to bring on a complementary skill set to his own. And so, and seeing that coachability through the CDL Rockies program and having met him, that's kind of the leap of faith that I took 3 years ago now, actually. And so at first I had no idea what a CEO did. So I was like, let's do COO because I'm more comfortable with that title. I can run engineering and projects and budgets. I just have no idea how to raise money. So, so we started that, but eventually as we progressed, we started raising capital, we started bringing on investors and stakeholders outside the business and you know, becoming a real thing. We, you know, quickly realized that that role needed to transition to me. And again, lucky that Peter was able to recognize that and facilitate that. It was, you know, a lot of discussions around what that looks like in swim lane development. And for an inventor, that's really hard to be able to give up your baby like that. So it's critical, as Michael mentioned in his quote around that co-founder or that early stage team to really coalesce in order to move a business forward. There's lots to do. So you have to kind of stay in your swim lane.
And you've been able to build your team mostly over the last year, but certainly over the last 2 years. What are some of the techniques or some of the things you've learned along the way from building that team through that process?
Yeah, I will premise this with saying we didn't get it right from the start. We were really focused on skills gaps at the beginning. And now our hiring strategy is cultural fit first. Cultural fit first, 100%. Kind of aligns with Rainforest, right? So the idea that we're doing a new business model, we have a new technology, there is no unicorn that we could hire that knows what to do. We are figuring out what to do. And so cultural fit comes first and foremost. And that's how we've been doing our team building to date. Recently, like Michael said, over the last year, we've had a lot of growth. They learn fast. You know, what we look for in our team is people that can make decisions with only 80% of the information. And that's hard for engineers. I'm an engineer. I understand, you know, you want to have everything buttoned up with a nice bow before you press go on a decision. And so cultural fit is that ability to be flexible in our business, be nimble and be able to make big decisions fast. And operate at the sprint pace, which is not for everybody. So cultural fit is definitely number one.
And then have you used your equity as a tool to try and attract those talented people? Is that part of the process of recruitment?
Yeah. So right at the beginning, genesis of, you know, developing a shareholders agreement, we knew that we wanted to be an employee-owned business. So we put aside a certain percentage of the equity for a stock option plan. And that's been a critical way to attract and retain talent, is being able to share in the vision and of the business and where we're headed. And for these employees to feel like they are participating in something that they own. So absolutely, stock option planning at the beginning, at the outset, has been a big benefit for us to attract talent because we're not the highest paying company out there in Calgary. So you have to be able to share something beyond, you know, monetary, you know, that vision and where you're going and where you're headed is really important for that cultural fit piece as well.
Very good. Thank you for that. And then we're moving into the next piece of building an effective corporation, and something that an early stage entrepreneur, any stage, it's not like, let's build a company, then we'll worry about putting in place systems and structure and everything. You have to have this in your mind as you go forward through all of the steps, because if you don't get it right, you're going to run into difficulty. And this is a quote from Brad Pierce. Some of you may know, he's a lawyer. BLG, or he might have recently retired. Someone mentioned that to me. But anyway, he's got extensive experience in the VC market here in Western Canada. He says, I think probably the primary reason a lot of these startups either fail or just fizzle out is they do not develop the structures or the networks that are key to the success in terms of their ability to raise further funding and allow them to scale their business. And what has sort of been your experience, Melanie, from that perspective of having in place control systems that give comfort to potential investors?
Yeah, this was a learning curve for me that was rather steep. So it was definitely a learning how to structure things as we go. But the overall take that I have on it today is start early, get your minute books in order, get your shareholders agreements sorted out as early as humanly possible, because it not only helps you basically create that alignment within your working group as founders, but also even to raise grants, non-dilutive funding. You need to have your ducks in a row, and certainly to raise external capital, debt and equity, you need to have that in order. And if you're doing a cleanup job in order to rush and raise some capital, and you have to go and get a director's resolution signed for something that happened a year ago, you're going to be delayed. In a startup, delays are no good. You really have to kind of get ahead of the ball in every aspect of the business. So building that base and getting all your ducks in a row and creating rhythms as well of communication. What we do is, over communicate sometimes, I think, just because it's a touch point with your stakeholders, your shareholders. And then you can ask for help as well, and you develop that trust. So rhythms and communication as well as reporting has been something that we've been developing over the last couple of years. And I would say it's been critical in being able to raise capital for us.
Yeah, one of the comments Brad made to me as well, just a follow-on comment, was that a lot of part of his business is what he calls his pay me later files, where people have to do cleanup, and sometimes it slows down the process, or sometimes you can't undo what's been done in the past, and investors will walk away, say this is too much work. I know when I worked in venture capital, if we were interested in an investment opportunity, if we saw a company that looked interesting, we'd ask for two things. As part of the governance documentation, we want to see a cap table. We want to know who we're talking to, like who actually owns this thing. You're the CEO, you're telling me this is the story, but I want to know who the actual owner is or owners are. And also I want to see your shareholders agreement. And if you've got a messed up cap table and a goofy shareholders agreement, I'm going to go, this isn't worth my time. It's just going to take too long to sort this thing out. So, that idea about let's just figure this out. I'm working on another book, which is taking not a shot at the lean startup methodology. I think it's a wonderful methodology, but it's incomplete because it says, go out there, a startup's a temporary organization, iterate with your customers, but it ignores the fact that you've got to build this corporation that's got to be ready to take advantage of that situation when you actually figure out what you're trying to do. And if you haven't built that framework, those control mechanisms, all those things along the way, you're going to be hooped because all of a sudden the market's ready to go and you're not there and you can't raise capital and you're going, shoot, we missed that opportunity. So, you got to think about this, and this is part of, there's these different aspects of developing a business. Certainly customers are first and foremost very important, but the back end piece and the corporate development is critically important as well. Yeah. So I think you've done the other part of the question, guidance to other entrepreneurs. I think you've done that with the way you answered the question. Did you want anything else to that topic we just talked about, Melanie?
I think another quick tip would be to align yourself with a legal counsel that gets startups. We had a hiccup at the beginning where we were working with an organization that was treating us like a publicly traded company, and it was really tricky. So making sure that your team, your external team, knows what they're talking about and can advise you appropriately. If you're like me and new to all these documents, legal counsel can be a huge partner, a really important partner for that.
Very good. I have a follow-on quote on that a little later, and I'll reinforce that point, which is critically important. I'm now going to draw on a quote from one of the founders of the Rainforest, Jim Gibson, who many of you know. He's a serial tech entrepreneur, angel investor, and author. And he was talking about this idea that developing the corporate structure and the organizational and governance is important. So his quote was, if you believe that you have a company and a product and a solution that is going to grow and need capital, you have to act and behave in a governance model one step ahead of where you're actually at. So if you're trying to raise an early stage round where you're raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, you should act like you're raising an institutional round of a Series A financing, like get ready like you're talking to VCs. What's been your experience with this governance and as you go out to raise funds, Melanie, through this process?
I agree with that comment. And sometimes entrepreneurs are, you're inclined to focus on the tech and the customers, which you should be focusing on more than the governance. And then like we were saying before, the cleanup job can be real time consuming. And so setting the backbone of the organization early, like we did because of some of the training, the MBA and the courses for governance that we took, setting the backbone really, really early helped us raise capital, I think, faster than other, comparative startups. So speed is the name of the game, and access to capital is survival for a startup. If you can have your bases covered early, then it's only going to help you. The time is worth spending early, I think, is my comment on that.
Very good. I appreciate that that insight. And here's the other one about bringing good directors on. And I'm going to ask you in just a minute to talk about your process, bringing advisors and directors on. But this is from Pat Lohr, who many of you know is with Panache Ventures. And so Pat says that directors of startups need to understand the challenges of these early stage ventures. And his quote, not just throw the rule book at them, but walk through the risk management processes with entrepreneurs and help them understand when to be cautious and when to be aggressive. I think this goes back to your earlier comment, Melanie, about having good counsel and good guidance along the way as to what's required as you go to build the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for us, we kind of focused on skills gaps as well. What we've done in the past, what we have never done before, and stepped away and looked at those skills gaps, and then found advisors in our space or outside of our space sometimes to start building relationships with. And I'll tell you, it is amazing when you ask someone for their advice. Almost 100% of the time, people are happy to help a startup. So the biggest hurdle is like getting brave enough to ask someone to spend some time with you and help you. I've personally never had someone say, no, I don't want to help you. And so just being open to building those relationships. It takes a lot of time to build those relationships for advisors, and especially directors. And so you start early, you know what you need from a gap perspective, and you start building those relationships, maybe bring them on as an official advisor first, a board advisor, or just a company advisor. And then maybe later bringing them on as a director when you both know each other and there's a trust, a trust that's inherent in that relationship. So it takes a long time. It's worth the time, but I would say don't be afraid to ask for help, because for those founders out there that if you think you have to have all the answers, you don't. There's people in Calgary that are amazing and that are willing to spend some time with you. So please reach out. That's what I've been doing. It's been helping our business a lot.
Yeah, and let me pick up on that. And then I see there's a question I'm going to just come back to. Would I support, or do you support a buy-sell agreement for partners or shareholders? I'll come back to that question. I want to just build on Melanie's point, because when people think about a board, they think of a board of directors, and it's really difficult to get someone to agree to be a director when they don't know you very well or don't know you at all. Because there's, as you likely know, a large degree of liability you can walk yourself into when you start working as a board member. And you've got a CEO that you don't know who's out doing things you don't really understand about, and all of a sudden you've got some personal liability for representations that individual has made or what have you. So certainly as a person, me personally, if someone asked me to be a director, I actually had someone do it recently. I said, no, I'm not going to be a director. No way. I don't know you. I mean, I might be an advisor, and then I'll get to know you. And then if I get excited about who you are and what you're doing, I get to think that you're a credible, honest, honorable person, then maybe I'm willing to give you some more time, and they'll think about maybe being a director down the road. So that whole issue, it is a relationship business. There's no doubt about that. And you want to be very careful about that. Now, having said that, you know, you can build a really strong group of advisors around your corporation, and people are willing to do that. The advantage of being an advisor is you are only being there for one thing, whatever that thing is. Like you have understanding about how to raise capital, or you've got legal expertise, or you've got information about that market or the customers, or whatever it happens to be. So as a CEO, if you're putting a board of advisors around you, then each advisor has specific skills that you're trying to tap into. And that's fine. And that people are willing to do that. There's no liability from their perspective for doing that. Once somebody becomes a director, they can't say, I'm only here to talk about marketing, or I'm only here to talk about finance. If you step on as a director, you've got a fiduciary duty to the corporation. You've got to become fully informed and engaged in all discussions around the decisions that the corporation and the board has to make. So you can't just say, look, I'm the finance guy. I'm not going to listen to the marketing side or whatever. If you decide you're going to be a director, you got to be fully engaged. And that's why it's also easier to get people to be advisors, informal or formal. It just depends on the process. There are formal agreements. You can have a board of advisors. You can give them options out of that pool that Melanie was talking about to, you know, entice them to want to be part of your, you know, your growth and add value. I don't know how you've structured your advisors at this point. I know it's ad hoc right now. I don't think you've got a formal board of advisors at this point yet.
We don't have a board of advisors that meet formally, but we have company advisors that we have signed advisory agreements with and offer stock option equity as a compensation package.
Very good. Thank you for that. And the other point I'm going to raise for an entrepreneur, when you think about advisors can be broad. Now, in the corporate setting, it's going to be advisor can add value to the corporation around, you know, issues that you have to deal with at the corporate level. But you also want to have support as a person. So you need personal support. You need somebody that maybe can give you coaching around your leadership style, and you can need somebody to help you maintain your physical and mental health through this process. And many of you know, and Melanie, I'm not going to ask you to comment on this, but you can if you want. Certainly, being a CEO is a very stressful situation to be put into. And if you're not there with a support network around you, again, that includes family, friends, ways to keep your physical well-being intact, and to help you learn as a person and grow as a person into that role. So when you think of advisors, you know, think broadly about the kind of support that you need to be successful. And maybe I will ask you just to comment on that, Melanie, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I agree. And knowing where you need help is half the battle, I think, as a CEO or any early stage company role. There's so much to do. Half the battle is, what do I need to do first and second? And sometimes just an ear, somebody you just can walk through it verbally and come to your own conclusion is what you need. And other times you actually need people to be like, you need to focus on this. So knowing who you can call on. And the other thing I would touch on, Michael, is peers. This Rainforest community is a great example. So peers within either your space or a similar stage of company that you're at, those are my therapy sessions. We have a standing monthly ladies wine entrepreneurial night that we do. And it's like I don't miss it. It's so important to me to understand where my peers are at, what challenges they have. I learn a lot from peers. So the networking bit of this community, for example, is so critical. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And that brings up a recollection I had when I interviewed another friend of mine that was a CEO, and said that without her YPO friends, peers, she would not, Young Presidents Organization, without that peer support, she wouldn't have survived through the ups and downs that she went through in that process. So you're right, that peer side is critically important, because it's tough to go to your board and say, look, I really need some help on this or that. I mean, they say, well, you figure it out. But your peers, I mean, that's kind of an open, free, shared process, and there's no judgment put on top of it. So it also is people that are going through the similar experience as you correctly identified. So yeah, as you think about advisors think broadly about what you need as a person to be successful in this process. And I think that's a great takeaway. I'm going to come back to that question I saw about whether I'd recommend a buy-sell agreement. Buy-sell agreement is usually used more in a partnership situation where you have 50% owners, and then, you know, the intent with the buy-sell agreement is to try and provide a mechanism to overcome an untenable situation, basically, to allow the corporation to survive. And basically, if you have two, you know, co-founders, 50% owners, where each has a strong opinion about which way to go and they can't agree, then the best mechanism is to try and unwind that partnership, and one party or the other takes control of the corporation. And that's really what the buy-sell agreement will allow you to do. In a entity where you've got more than two shareholders, and it doesn't really make as much sense. That's where the shareholders agreement comes into play. And there's mechanisms built into the shareholders agreement. Just simple things. I'll give you an example, like founders, a classic example of founders. And let's suppose there are 4 founders that, you know, start a corporation, and they're all friends. Everything's great. Everything's rosy. It was always, whenever you start anything, it works. And then one of them, you know, gets pissed off, or, you know, decides they want to move to BC and become the ski bum or whatever it is. They decide they don't want to be part of the entity anymore, and they walk away with 25% of the shares. And the other, you know, 3 partners are going there. Wait a minute here, you know, you can't do that unless you have some mechanism to prevent that. And that's where you have vesting agreements and some of the paperwork that you want to have. It's like, fine, you go away, but you don't get to keep your shares. No problem. You know, have a good life, kind of thing. So that paperwork's important, because if an investor comes in and goes, well, where's that 25% owner? You know, they're out skiing somewhere. You go, well, that's not a good model to have. I mean, so just things like that. So shareholders agreements, a whole different topic, a whole big topic of discussion that we don't have time for here. I might have time for one more question. Oh, sorry. I also want to pick up on the Mentoring Society of Alberta. Vmsa is a wonderful organization. I see a link has been provided there as well. If you're looking for advisors or one-on-one mentoring, a great organization. I know some of the people associated with that, and they're top-notch folks. As Melanie mentioned, there's some really good people in Alberta that can provide support as you go forward. So yeah, certainly that is a great organization to draw upon here. U of A also has VMS program. Good. Anything you can do. And that's kind of where I wanted to end off the discussion here. I'm going to just share my last slide. There's lots of information out there. Professional services firms, lawyers, and accountants have expertise, although, as Melanie identified, you want to be careful and do your due diligence on them. Make sure they really can help you. The costs, you know, there's always this, you know, we can't be spending money on things that aren't important, like lawyers and whatever, but boy, if you can save yourself some problems down the road, it's well worth it. And the costs are really not that high. A lot of the legal firms will give you so many hours of guidance up front, or they'll do things at a lower cost initially just to get you as a future client. The local incubator accelerator groups have the ability to provide assistance. We talked about how SwirlTex came through Tech Edmonton. Platform Calgary provides support. Coming out of the University of Calgary, we've got Innovate Calgary. Will help you on IP issues and some other corporate development issues. Y Combinator's got some materials there, and I've got a link there. Y Combinator's got their library. ycombinator.com library. And as mentioned, I've created a course on governance. Maybe, where am I here? Maybe I didn't share that properly. Oh well, whatever. I was reading it. It's there. And I think you're going to provide a link, which basically we've got a couple of month program over a series of weeks. There's online content, some face-to-face content. What we tried to do is create an opportunity where entrepreneurs can interact with each other, that peer group that Melanie's talked about, but also we've put in the room seasoned directors that are looking for more opportunities in this early stage space. They may be, you know, people that have a lot of public board experience, and so they're trying to learn what would be the skills I'd have to be able to understand how to add value to an early stage startup. So we offered that program last year. It was well received. We had 12 entrepreneurs and 12 directors. Melanie was one of the participants in the program. So that's good. I see we've got Gowlings is okay. Yeah, set up a shareholders framework for under $2,500. Yep, good. Yeah, reach out to your friends that have had good success with people. Melanie, you wanted to comment on something?
Just echoing that the governance course is really worthwhile for entrepreneurs. covers a lot of basics, but you also get that FaceTime with directors that have been there, done that. So great networking opportunity as well on that course for sure. And echoing the VMS, I'm part of the VMS as well. Changed my life. You get 3 mentors with VMS. So if there's entrepreneurs in the room, I would highly recommend checking it out. It is a bit hard to get in. You have to kind of be a scaling company. But you know, once you're in, it's amazing and highly recommend.
Good. I'm trying to see if there's any final questions in our probably 30 seconds we have left, so maybe not. I thank you for the opportunity here. This is a topic area I think is very important, and I thank you for letting us share this discussion with you today. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have additional questions. I'll give you my email is pretty simple, robinson@ucalgary.ca. Just my last name at UCalgary. I don't know why, but apparently I was the only one there at one point in time. So that's why I get that email. Anyway, I'm going to stop now. It was a pleasure. And thank you, Melanie. I really appreciate you being part of this discussion today.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you both so much. Like you say, Michael, it's a really important conversation to be having, and I don't know where everyone else is hanging out virtually these days, but I don't seem to see this conversation happening a lot elsewhere unless you're part of a incubator or accelerator program and learning those fundamentals. So thank you for all of your resources. There was a question at the very top looking for the resources you mentioned in one of the earlier slides, so we can maybe grab that. But we're going to head over to breakout rooms now right away. Hopefully Michael and Melanie will stay with us and answer any questions. If you're looking for topics of conversation, you can maybe talk about what you learned today or what you want to learn more about based on the conversation we are having now. So I'll send you off into the breakout rooms and bring you all back in about 10, 12 minutes. Enjoy. From the Rainforest directly, we are going to be, you hear from Al every week about guest hosting the podcast or being a guest on the podcast. Maybe you've been curious, but never decided to take the plunge and message Al. Well, now is your chance to get a bit more background information on what it means to be a Rainforest host next Thursday at Amber, 4 o'clock. Can you put the link in the chat? Next Thursday at 4 o'clock, Al is going to host a Train the Host session. So if you've ever wanted to dabble in podcasting, maybe this is your opportunity to check it out, or maybe you're an experienced podcaster and you want to do a guest spot on ours. This is your opportunity. Great benefits to being a podcast host, growing your network, learning about the ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. Al probably has a lot more to say on that, but we're running out of time. The other huge, ginormous announcement that we have, there is no link yet. So please don't go start looking for a link. It does not exist until mid next week. But we are going to have one of the authors of The Rainforest, Greg Horowitz, come do a fireside chat with us on March 26th from 12 until 1. That is a Friday lunch hour, not a Wednesday. It is a Friday. This is part of a book series that Craig Elias is running through Bow Valley College and his 150 startups. And we just kind of, you know, got our nose in his business and decided we would take part. And so we're going to be hosting that on Friday, March 26th. Jim Gibson will be moderating, and it is bound to be very inspirational. So just hold the space in your calendar and watch for the announcements coming out on social and our Slack channel. If you don't know how to access our Slack channel, you need to sign our social contract and then we'll gain access. If for some reason you don't, please contact myself or Amber Rowden, who's in the room, and we will help you navigate that. And so with that, I want to hand it over to Emily, who is one of our Libby participants. And Emily, I knew this would happen, and I'm really sorry that we've gone over. So if people will probably be dropping off, but there's still a pretty big crowd here. If you want to tell us where you're at with your big idea.
Absolutely. And I totally recognize it. We're at 1 o'clock. If you do have to leave, I will not be offended at all. So, but thank you very much for your time. Bridget, do I have the option to share my screen? Perfect. Thank you. Okay. All right. Move the screen over. Oh, I think I activated a poll. Sorry, everyone.
Sorry to interrupt. I did have to activate the poll before. I just wanted to capture some more responses before people jump. So sorry to distract you.
Oh, no worries. Oh. Sorry.
We can see your screen. It looks good.
Okay, sorry, I had the poll still up in front of me. I apologize.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. My name is Emily, and I'm happy to present my entrepreneurial idea, which is Indie Sponsors, which is a platform designed for nonprofit organizations to support through their marketing and advertising channels. So nonprofit organizations do amazing work in our communities, yet a lot of people don't know what these organizations do, or sometimes that they even exist. A lot of times nonprofits, they have to rely very heavily on social media and word of mouth in order to educate the public on what it is that they're doing. Unfortunately, this is a very time-consuming process. There is tons of room for human error, and unfortunately, nonprofits just really don't have the budget to invest in advertising or marketing in order to educate the public on what it is that they do. Indie Sponsors is a platform where organizations will be able to proactively share their social media content to their followers in a more accurate, informative, and up-to-date method. So how this is going to work is organizations will sign up for a monthly base subscription account, and they can proactively upload their existing social media content, such as infographics, to proactively make available to their followers. So an individual social media user would also create a free account. They can link their social media channels. They can identify an organization that they want to support, and they can pull the infographic directly from the organization to use for their own social media posts. This way, when they want to share their stories, when they want to share their experiences, why they went to a specific nonprofit, they can also represent the organization with content provided directly from the organization. They don't have to worry about trying to write it themselves. So the benefit for a nonprofit would be this is going to be a less costly option than going for the traditional forms of digital advertising, print advertising, radio, or TV. There's a greater guarantee that when individuals are talking about an organization they care about on social media, it's going to be accurate. Right now, people are trying to write their own post to summarize an organization, and most of the time it is incorrect and it's misleading. For individuals, they'll be able to play a more active role within the as a member of the organization from a donor perspective. So they are going to make a greater impact when they're talking about an organization through social media. They can share their stories and they can sponsor content that matters to them. Being part of the Alberta Rainforest Libby Fund program, it was an unbelievable experience. I was so thankful to participate in it. I really got a better understanding of my problem to solve, my customer discovery, and what my value add is going to be when I build my MVP. For me, my next steps right now is I'm looking to connect with individuals that have expertise and experience with web development and app development so I can move into that MVP stage. Thank you everyone so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to connect with you. My info is up on the screen if you'd like to connect at a later time. Thank you, everyone.
Emily, great presentation. Love the idea. Told you that having worked in a nonprofit, it's definitely a problem needing solved, to be solved. Anybody have any questions for Emily? Or maybe advice on where she might be able to help find some tech expertise to join her team?
I'm shy to jump in there because it's my first rainforest, but I would say, Emily, I think I know you from Calgary French School days. I'm not sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I sent you a private message. Emily and I used to go to school together once in a blue moon. But I would say I'm a part of a community that Zach Novak is running, where it's really trying to connect people that are looking to transition out of oil and gas and traditional Alberta and Calgary sectors into more tech startups. And so I can definitely connect with you. I wrote down your email, so I just wanted to jump in there. I see some people nodding heads about Zach. He's incredibly well connected.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's so good to see you.
Awesome. Okay.
I would say maybe connect with EvolveU as well. I'm from Bow Valley College. We don't have a development program right now, but EvolveU does. So they might be able to assist you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
And Zach was from Evolve actually, so.
Yeah, great. We're big fans.
And you're familiar with Calgary Foundation?
Yeah, I currently work at a nonprofit, so I connect with the Calgary Foundation quite frequently, but not necessarily from this angle just yet. But yeah, very familiar with them.
I think they'd be interested in what you're doing and a way to help the not-for-profit sector there. Yep.
Absolutely.
And did you say you need software developers, or where were you there?
So right now I'm very much in the ideation phase. I'm doing a lot of customer discovery just to ensure that when I do go forward and ask nonprofits sign up for a monthly subscription, they're going to be accessing a platform that will actually solve a problem for them. But right now I don't necessarily have a product to show them. So I'd like to move forward into the stage of having that website, having that app, and pulling in some of that software expertise would be phenomenal.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and please do that. Don't be one of those companies that I hear that have spent $100,000 and still don't have any software because they didn't know what they wanted. So please don't do that.
Yeah.
I do not have that kind of funding, so that's not even an option.
Emily, I actually volunteer with Startup Calgary, and I also sit on several nonprofit boards in the community, and one of them is a community association board. So we can definitely connect regarding that. There's a lot of people in the startup community, especially the Startup Calgary organization, that have a lot of technical expertise. So maybe you can connect with some people like that as well.
Absolutely. I actually have a meeting with Startup Calgary tomorrow, so that's
gonna give
perfect advice, but I'll definitely mention your name to Clayton.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily, one other thing is Craig Elias is running these workshops with David Bland, is it? Around formulating your MVP, and some of us took it last weekend. It's a really great, straightforward workshop on developing your idea further.
Perfect. That'd be wonderful.
It's the plan to make money doing this so that you can support yourself going forward or support a team?
Absolutely. If I can transition to this being my full-time gig, I'd love to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll just jump in and say that generally we don't run over 1 o'clock, but we do always leave this room open if people want to stay on and connect, which it seems many of you do. So if enough stick on, I can stick around. I can throw you into more breakout rooms, or otherwise you can stay in this room, or you can take this opportunity to and get back to your day. But thank you all so much for coming, and thank you. I know Melanie's gone into Dr. Robinson for joining us today. It was an hour well spent, and have a great week, everybody.
And Emily, quick note, are you connected with Trico Foundation?
I'm familiar with them, but not personally connected with them.
Look it up. There's a bunch of free resources that you can get access to.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that, Peter.
Yeah, their foundation, just to build on what Peter's talking about, is really driven to help social purpose businesses. So that's something that Wayne and Eleanor really love supporting. So that's a good connection.
Yeah,
Oh,
good place to go get beat up.
And they're called FICO Foundation?
Trico.
Trico.
Yeah, Trico.
TRICO?
Yeah, the home builders, yeah.
Cool.
Okay, take care, everybody.
See you guys.
Hey, Peter.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Hey, Bridget, can you send me that thing, please?
Yes, I will after this.
Okay,
Absolutely.
sounds good.
Thank
Nice meeting you.
Thanks for coming.
No worries.
Amber, you didn't get that survey, hey? From it would have came through Eventbrite.
No, I couldn't find it. I checked my personal email because that's why I signed up, and then I checked my Rainforest one too.
Maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I think it says it's sent, and now I'm like, no one wants to give me feedback. I'm just busy putting up the events for March because I realized I haven't. So those will be up to start promoting in the next hour or so.
Thanks for today's session.
was my first session.
Thanks,
so-
Dean. Was it your first time coming, or have you been
Yeah.
coming previously?
No, I heard about it a long time ago, but I've just been doing other things. But I'm setting up a new business now, so it felt like I really need to be finding out what's the landscape out there and see what's going on. Get my head out of software, like writing the code into seeing the world. But yeah, it was really good. It was very useful. Like a lot of it was very on point for what I'm looking for right now, which is that, starting the business, who do you reach out to? What kind of formation do you need to structure things? And, so it's been super useful. It felt like a lot of it was Calgary based. Is that you say there's a leaning heavily on Calgary? Because I'm in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we are in Calgary. We're called Rainforest Alberta. The movement started, I don't know, 15, 16, depending who you ask. It started here in Calgary by a group of founders who saw the need for building this culture of trust as the sector was really taking off. And so that was happening down here in Calgary, and then Edmonton ecosystem caught wind, and they said, what are you guys up to? So we had been working with some consultants from California, and then I guess what happened was they brought that work up to Edmonton, and then Edmonton has now started their own chapter. So while we're kind of all called Rainforest Alberta, we do run independently in a sense. We have like Amber and I are both employees with Rainforest Alberta in Calgary. Edmonton is run through a steering group, and so they have when COVID hit and we took lunch without lunch online because it used to be in person, we decided we would work together with Edmonton on this event. They used to hold a lunch without lunch, and then they also host their connector, I think it's called, on the first Tuesday of the month. But check their Eventbrite page maybe, because I might be wrong, but it would be Rainforest Alberta -YEG is their page.
Okay.
So that one is also starting, I think, to see some Calgarians go do that one now that it's virtual, but mostly more Edmontonians on that one. And then I'm not sure if you're aware of TNT. They are a group doing a lot of networking, and then I think even venture capital type of work. I know they have pitch nights. I'm not exactly clear on what their mandate is, but I know they're bringing people together in Edmonton.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it as coming into this, it's been sort of Canada-wide, and I found the divide with like what's going on over Montreal and Toronto, and how like out of like connection I feel with that. And so it feels a bit strange to have like the disconnect between Edmonton and Calgary, being that we're so close.
I know, right? Well, yeah, luckily COVID has made that easier. Yeah, if you're like newer to the scene, I came onto this role in September, which is about the time that so like Innovation Week is held in both cities in October, November. And it was really cool this year because it was all virtual, and Startup Edmonton had an incredible week hosted through this really great platform. And you could just kind of pop in and out of events. They really nailed the virtual setting. I know a lot of us from Calgary were taking part in that, and then they took part in ours. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening across the province, but then there's a lot focused specifically on each city. Definitely a different culture in both cities. And so there's always kind of that bit of a disconnect, but definitely Alberta wide. What is your company?
My background's in video games. So I worked at BioWare for a long time, but I wanted to start doing my own company. Working in such huge companies with hundreds and hundreds of people, creatively, it's a real strain. Yeah. So I wanted to create something smaller, 20, 25 people, which is very viable for video games now. There's games coming out that are selling 3-4 million copies from a team of 5, 10, 15 people. So I felt like, there seems to be a highly profitable way of setting up a business now, where you don't need to have $100 million and 300, 400 people working on something. And creatively, that seems to be, much more appealing. So I'm trying to set up a business around that, which obviously means I need capital to bring that core people on board. Some of the other conversations I've had have been all very good. And then they say, okay, where's your demo? I'm like, well, I kind of need capital to get the people to get the demo. And it's like, okay, we'll come back once you've got the demo. I'm like, okay. So that's my big kind of challenge. And a lot of the smaller funds I'm seeing right now, they seem to be like that post stage. of like, okay, you've got some funding and you can put that into this fund and we'll make that fund bigger. And it's like, what happens if you've got no funding? How do you get from 0 to the first step? So that's kind of the biggest question I've got right now is like, I've found that I've spent a lot of time, not useless, it's helping me understand, but like ultimately you spend a week and you find there's no option at the end of that week.
Have you gone to Startup Edmonton for advice?
In the past, I've known them quite well, but not specifically for this.
Yeah, Connectica.ca too also lists all of the, you can check out funding by, you know, the different stages of where your company's at. But another person that comes, well, Aaron Budnik is on the Rainforest Steering Committee in Edmonton. I don't know if you're connected with him, but if you were to find him on LinkedIn, he was here today, but he always has his camera off. Budnik maybe. He definitely knows the ecosystem in Edmonton much better than I do, and has been around for quite some time, so would probably be aware of any like pre-seed funding options there. And then another, I don't know the exact fit, but Thin Air Labs in Calgary, which is one of the Rainforest Founders companies, Jim Gibson's company, and he has many partners, but I think they have a focus on gaming. So it would maybe be worth just a conversation, phone call, like they'll be open to steering you in the right direction. I know they talk about the lack of pre-seed funding all the time. So they should have the resources and places for you to go more than I would know.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll let you get on with you today.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, look forward to the next one.
Yeah, we'll hop on our Slack channel too. You can put any asks on there and people love to give advice.
Excellent.
Okay.
I need it.
Great.
Have a good day.
Have a good day. Bye, Dee. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Oh, too late.
Oh, music honor. Okay. Oh, I'm still recording. God, I hate when I record. I hate how I'm recorded every